Hi friends, this is Benjamin from English Classes Online. You are welcome to today's video. In today's lecture, we shall be talking about summary writing in the West African Senior School Certificate Examination and in the National Examinations Council Senior School Certificate Examination. Our focus in today's video will be on practical illustration. This is in response to popular demand. We want to pick a specific past exam question and show how the summary questions are answered in the exam. And as we do that, I want you to focus your attention so you'll be able to learn how to do it if you are going in for any of these exams. If you are new to this channel, kindly subscribe to the channel. Click also on the bell icon so that whenever I upload a new video, you will be informed instantly. Let's dive into the lesson and be able to look at it together. Right, so here we are. We are looking at summary writing in Neco SSCE and Wassce with focus on practical illustration. Now, summary is about, extracting the main ideas in a passage and presenting them in your own words. Now, we are illustrating with Wassce of June 2008, and the instruction in number 8, as you can see here, is read the following passage carefully and answer the questions on it. Now, the passage is given, but we shall first look at the steps. It is true that in the previous video, we discussed the step-by-step procedure for answering summary questions. But since we are illustrating with a practical past exam question, let's remind ourselves of this procedure. Now, useful steps to take when answering summary questions. Read the questions first to know exactly what you are to look for in the passage. I will show you the benefits of reading the questions first. Of course, you can adopt whichever method works more effectively for you. Now, after reading the question and you already know what you are looking for, you read the passage to understand it. The key to answering summary question is comprehension. To comprehend means to understand. Once you understand what you are asked to do, you do it. That's all that there is to it. The third one is to read the questions again carefully, if need be, and make sure you understand what you are asked to summarize. Then read the passage again and then extract the main ideas required for answering the questions. There are certain things that can help you, such as looking for what we call the thesis statement, which is the main idea of the passage. You will always find it in the introductory, the first paragraph, Then in each paragraph, you will also be looking for what is called the topic sentence. Now, these are only necessary in as they will help you to have a clearer understanding of what the passage is about. But what you are looking for specifically is what the examiner has asked you to summarize in the question, as we shall see when we start solving the given past question. Then once you have extracted the main ideas from the passage, the next step is to reconstruct the ideas you have extracted from the passage using, any of the word reduction methods. Now, it might interest you to know that summary writing is all about reducing words. It's not about increasing words. In writing essay, you are to increase words, develop your from one sentence into paragraphs and into pages, but it's not so with summary writing. You are given a whole passage and you are asked to summarize it in a few sentences, as we shall see. So it's all about word reduction. Let me give you one analogy. If you are asked, if someone says, Mr. Balogun is a man whose wife has died, you can reduce the sentence to just a fewer words, by replacing a subordinate clause with a single word that means the same. We know that a man whose wife has died is a widower. So we can simply reduce the sentence to a few words by saying, Mr. Balogun is a widower, and that means the same thing. So that's one method of reducing words. There are other methods, all right? Now, once you have been able to reconstruct the main ideas in your own sentences, the next thing is to present your answers in the specified number of sentences using either a preamble method or the direct sentence method. I will show you the difference between these two methods. And finally, you proofread your answers and correct the errors where necessary. Let's look at the do's and don'ts. So there are certain things you ought to know so that you don't stumble, you don't commit blunders when summarizing. Now, we have already mentioned the preamble. The preamble is an opening statement. You can use it where necessary. Let's look at this example, June, Wassce of June 2004. And you are asked to, this is the question. In 4 sentences, 1 for each, summarize the 4 ways in which grass is useful to humans. That's question 8B in that year's Wassce, WAEC exam, if you like. Now, to use a preamble, what we do is to find out what we are asked to summarize. Summarize the 4 ways in which grass is useful to humans. So we skip summarize, and then we cut this from here. We use what we are asked to summarize to construct our preamble. What are we asked to summarize? The 4 ways in which grass is useful to humans. So from here, we just say the 4 ways in which grass is useful to humans are, we put a colon. And that's what is presented here as a preamble. Then the next thing you ought to know is that you need to write the number and alphabet exactly the way the examiner has stated them. This is question 8B, all right? So you cannot come and write number 2 here. That's the mistake most candidates make. An examiner has set question B and they are answering question 2. I mean, that's an aberration. It's completely wrong. So since the question is 8B, write 8B here. You can see it clearly stated. That's how to present your answer, 8B. Then your preamble will be this. The 4 ways in which grass is useful to humans are I, grass serves as food to humans. I, it is a source of oxygen. I, it is used for building houses. IV, it beautifies the environment. All right? Now, if you decide to use the direct sentence method instead of the preamble, all you need to do is to eliminate the preamble here. You simply write 8b, and then you write I, and you write grass serves as food to humans. IV, present them, direct sentence. It means you are doing away with the preamble. The next thing you should note is that you have to avoid using a preamble that does not make a sentence. Example, in one sentence, summarize the main idea of the passage. You know, you are not to use a preamble to present a question that requires only one sentence. Doesn't require a preamble. A preamble is required for a question that requires you to present 2 or more sentences. All right? So it's wrong to say the main idea is, then you put a colon and you write the increasing rate of road accident in the country. That is absolutely wrong. Simply state it in a direct sentence here. There is an increasing rate of road accidents in the country, full stop. The next thing is that you should avoid copying word for word from the passage. If you do this, the examiner may award you 0. Try to present your answer in your own words, all right? Then avoid the inclusion of irrelevant or unnecessary material. It is called mindless lifting, and you lose 1 mark for each scoring question. For each question you answer and you include unnecessary material. What are unnecessary material? You know, when a writer is writing, he will state a main point and he will start giving examples. Those examples he has given are not material for the summary. The material for the summary is the key point he has stated, and that's what you will extract and reconstruct into your own sentence. All right? And this passage was given in one sentence, state the intention of the writer. You know, that is Wassce of June 2000. And this candidate came with this answer, you know, all these things, he just copied everything in paragraph 1 in answer to this question in one sentence. And look at what the candidate presented here. Are you scared of speaking before a large audience or even making a few suggestions in public? This need not be. You can make effective speeches in public. Here are a few pointers. You know, this is how this writer started. Then, you know, and you are asked to summarize in one sentence the intention of the writer. The correct thing is to say that the intention of the writer is to provide tips on how to make effective public speeches. Full stop. Not to copy down everything the writer has written there. Then you have to avoid giving your summary answers in phrases. The instruction is you should present your answers in sentences. So always take note of this. Ensure that you present your answers in grammatical and acceptable sentences. For example, this is a question in 8B of Wassce, June 2006. In 2 sentences, 1 for each, summarize the major effects of malnutrition. All right? And some candidates presented these wrong answers. The 2 major effects of malnutrition are I, damaging of the body, II, chronic diseases in adulthood. Now, the error in this kind of answer is that what you have presented here is a phrase. Damaging the body is not a sentence. Chronic diseases in adulthood is not a sentence. A sentence is a group of words that contains a finite verb and makes complete meaning or expresses a complete thought. And so the correct thing is the 2 major effects of malnutrition are I, malnutrition damages the body. That's a complete idea. All right? II, it leads to chronic illnesses in adulthood. So that's present your answers in complete sentences. That is very, very important because each summary question is asking you to present your answers in sentences. Look at this question here, in 2 sentences. It didn't say in 2 phrases or in 2 words, all right? Okay, so let's go back to the question, the past question we want to illustrate with. Now, read the following passage carefully and answer the questions on it. Now, as we already discovered in the discussion of the steps to take, we want to read the question first, and we will note the advantages. So here we are. We begin with the questions. Question A, in 3 sentences, 1 for each, summarize the 3 negative consequences of rural-urban migration discussed in the passage. B, in 3 sentences, 1 for each, summarize the writer's suggestions for tackling the problem. Now, the number 1 benefit of reading the question first is that when you read the question immediately gives you an overview of what the passage is about without even reading a single line yet. Now, what do we find here? From what we are asked to summarize, we already have a clue as to what the passage is really about. So look at it here. Summarize the 3 negative consequences of rural-urban migration discussed in the passage. So we have discovered that what the writer discussed in the passage is about negative consequences of rural-urban migration. So we already know what we are looking for. Then in B, we are asked to summarize the writer's suggestions for tackling the problem. That gives us additional idea that the writer has not only discussed the negative consequences of rural-urban migration, but he has also made suggestions as to how to solve the problem. So we are looking for the negative consequences of rural-urban migration, and we are also looking for the writer's suggestions for solving the problem. The second key benefit of reading the question first is that it saves time, you know. Having read the question and having discovered what you are supposed to look for in the passage, you are no longer in the dark as you begin to figure out what is the passage about, because you already know. And then you are going to read with a purpose. After reading the question, you read with a reading technique we call the scanning technique. Let me give you one analogy. You have been asked to go into the bedroom and pick a purse. But getting into the bedroom, you forget entirely what you have been asked to pick. If you spend the whole week searching the entire room, you will only end up wasting your time because you don't know what you are to pick there. So, but if you simply ask and verify, what did you ask me to pick from there? And it's a purse, okay. So immediately you find the purse in the room, you pick it, and that ends the search. You don't search endlessly, right? Once you know what you're looking for. So that is the major advantage. It simplifies the reading. And so when women go for a scan, you know, what are they looking for? They are looking for a specific piece of information. They are not asking the doctor to search their entire womb for everything that is there. They are looking for a specific piece of information. So the scanning technique in reading enables you to search for a given piece of information. And once you find it, you extract it or underline it, and you have gotten it. It simplifies reading. All right, so now let's go to the passage. And because we already know what we are looking for, once we spot it, we underline it or extract it, and already this has been underlined here in paragraph 1. Many cities in the world have now become overcrowded because every day people migrate to them from the countryside in search of work and better living conditions. You see, that's one of the negative consequences of rural-urban migration. The cities are overcrowded, so we have taken note of that. And then we read the other ones are just supporting that major idea. You don't have to include them in your summary. The problem is far worse in the third world countries, where the harsh living conditions and the lack of gainful employment, right? Lack of gainful employment opportunities in rural areas usually compel a ceaseless and massive rural-urban drift. So you can see the other sentence only throws more light on the already stated problem. So we have gotten one negative consequence of rural-urban migration, and that is overcrowding in the cities or overpopulation in the cities. All right? Then let's go to the next one. This desperate state of affairs is not without its consequences for the cities. Facilities like accommodation, schools, hospitals, water supply, and public transport cannot cope with the demands on them from increased numbers of people, and so they are under severe strain. So that's a major problem. The facilities can no longer are no longer sufficient for the people in the cities because of the overcrowding, the overpopulation there. Then house rents soar astronomically. You see, the major problem is facilities. Houses are also among the facilities. And so too many tenants crowd into inadequate spaces. Markets, streets, and motorways, they are also facilities, are congested with people and vehicles. And as the garbage disposal, another facility, is insufficient, the garbage piles up everywhere, contributing to environmental pollution. So you can see. Many of the migrants come to big cities in the hope of finding employment. However, because a majority of them are unskilled workers or fresh school leavers, not equipped in any way for gainful employment, they simply end up swelling the ranks of the desperate unemployed in the city. The devil, they say, makes work for idle hands. With no means of livelihood in the relatively more expensive cities, many of these disillusioned young people resort to prostitution, fraud, and crime in order to survive. No wonder the crime rate in the cities is forever rising, and there are daily reports of victims who lose their money, possessions, or even their lives to daredevil robbers. So you can see exactly the third negative consequence, and that is increasing rate of crime in the cities. So we have noted these three major negative consequences of rural-urban migration. Now we are going to look for answers to question B, which is the writer's suggestions as to how to solve the problem. Now let's continue reading. You see how easy our reading becomes since we already know what we are looking for. All right? Now, what we have underlined here, you may not be allowed in any of these exams to underline these things in your answer sheet. So to avoid getting into the invigilator's black book, you use the last sheet, the last page of your answer sheet as a rough sheet of paper is allowed. You extract this and you write them down there, you know. And when you are through, when you have already reconstructed them and used them to answer the question, you cancel out the rough work neatly. All right? Okay, so let's go to the next. How can this deplorable state of affairs in the cities be reversed? Now, this is a rhetorical question. It gives us a clue to the fact that the writer will soon start suggesting solution. Since the search for jobs accounts for much of the rural-urban drift, one way to encourage the creation of jobs one way is to encourage the creation of jobs outside the cities. For example, certain businesses such as banks and manufacturing industries could be encouraged to set up branches in rural areas. That's a clear suggestion the writer has made. What is he saying here? That businesses should be encouraged to set up branches in the rural areas. His argument is that if rural dwellers have ready access to the same jobs they go to look for in the city, the need for migrating will be reduced. So let businesses or industries set up their branches in the rural areas. And once the rural dwellers have jobs in their communities, they don't need to migrate to the cities. That's one suggestion. Let's go to the next. It should be admitted that in this modern age, life without basic amenities of pipe-borne water, electricity, good roads, schools, and hospitals is just not good enough. Many rural dwellers are lured to the cities because of lack of amenities. So providing them in these rural communities will not only contribute to stemming the tide of migration, but will also create a favorable environment for investment. So that is the second suggestion, that facilities should be provided in the rural areas as a way of, encouraging the rural urban dwellers to stay back, because it's one of the things they are looking for in the cities. All right? So let's go to the next. It has also been argued that rural farming is generally abandoned to the aged. All right? The primitive labor-intensive methods and relatively low yields have made it unattractive to the youth, who would rather seek their fortune in the cities. If farming is made attractive, for example, through mechanization, it will become another source of employment for rural dwellers and thus reduce the necessity to migrate to the city. So you can see exactly the suggestion there. That's the third suggestion. Let's go back. So what is the suggestion here? That farming should be made attractive through mechanization, all right? Because if farming becomes attractive to the youth because of mechanization, then they can just be employed on the mechanized farms, and they don't need to go to the city. So we have been able to extract all the ideas we are looking for. And the last paragraph here is just the writer's conclusion. Rural-urban migration causes a serious population imbalance and has all sorts of attendant problems that can get worse if not tackled effectively. So the sooner a solution is sought, the better. All right, so now what we have been able to do, I must emphasize that, our reading became simpler because we read the question first and we discovered what we were looking for. So each time we came across what we were looking for, we picked it and we didn't need to waste our time further. But I have to emphasize here that if you are reading a passage in an exam, you need to read it until you understand it. We were able to simplify the procedure here because we already have an advanced method that we have used. So at your level, you need to read the passage and reread it if necessary, and then go back to the question and make sure you understand what you are asked to summarize, and make sure you understand what the passage is about, and then you will be able to extract the specific ideas in compliance with the examiner's demands. All right, so again, what we need to do now that we have extracted the ideas is to reconstruct these main ideas we have extracted into our own sentences. We change them to our own words. Remember that one of the don'ts for summary writing is, copying word for word from the passage and mindless lifting or inclusion of unnecessary material. Now, all these are forbidden in summary writing. So each main idea we have extracted, we have to reconstruct it in our own way. So let's go back and see how we can do that. The first point, we begin with the negative consequences. Let's look at the question again. In 3 sentences, 1 for each, summarize the 3 negative consequences of rural-urban migration discussed in the passage. So we are looking for the negative consequences. The first one is this. We read the whole sentence, very long and complicated, but we have to carve out a simple sentence out of it that contains the idea. Okay, so let's read it. Many cities in the world have now become overcrowded because every day people migrate to them from the countryside in search of work and better living conditions. All right, okay. Now, the key words here are cities and overcrowded. All right. And the simple thing is that most of the cities are overcrowded. The word many, you can retain it or replace it with numerous. The word overcrowded, you can also replace it with congested, all right? Or even overpopulated, if you like. But try to retain something that is as specific as this, overcrowded, overcrowded or congested. So let's look for a simple sentence. We can say, well, majority of the cities are overcrowded owing to, like, we can simply say the cities are overcrowded. That's just sufficient, all right? What we are looking for is just the key idea there, all right? So once we have done that, we go to the next one. Facilities like accommodation, schools, hospitals, water supply, and public transport cannot cope with the demands on them from increased numbers of people, and so they are under severe strain. Now, facilities. We don't have to include examples. Accommodation, schools, hospitals, water supply, and public transport, they are all facilities. So once we have picked the word facilities, that covers all these things mentioned here. And then we can look for other words to capture the main idea of the writer there. What the writer is saying is that because of the large population of people in the city, the facilities are no longer enough to cater for them. So we can say, well, facilities are insufficient for the large population of people in the cities, or are not enough, or are inadequate, right? Okay, so just capture it in your own words, and that is the simple way of summarizing. Now let's go to the third negative consequence of rural-urban migration. No wonder the crime rate in the cities is forever rising, and there are daily reports of victims who lose their money, possessions, or even their lives to daredevil robbers. The simple idea here is that the rate of crime keeps increasing in the city. Very simple. You can say that the rate of crimes in the cities continue to rise, or there is a rising rate of crimes in the city. Just put it in your own words, but let the main idea be captured. So we have been able to do this, and once we have done this, remember that in answering the question, we come here and we carve out our preamble if we decide to use it. And so we have gotten our answers to question A. To present it, we simply come here and we carve out our preamble if we decide to use it. Don't forget, we may decide not to use the preamble. We just state the sentences directly. That's what I call the direct sentence method. But if you are using the preamble method, you simply come here and you say, the 3 negative consequences of rural-urban migration discussed in the passage are, you put a colon, and then you go back and you say, majority of the cities have become overcrowded or have become congested because of migrants, if you like. And so that is the answer to I, all right? And again, one thing I want you to know is that here the examiner has given us question A. Don't come here and write answer 1, because that will be a huge confusion. Question A should be answered with answer A, all right? Don't change the alphabet to a figure. So you write A here and you say the 3 negative consequences of rural-urban migration discussed in the passage are, you put a colon. In the next line, you write I, and then you write the majority of the cities are overcrowded because of migrants, all right? Okay, let's go back and look at our second answer, which will be II. Then you can say the facilities in the cities are no longer enough to cater for the large population of people. Something like that, just, you know, capture it in your own way, but let the main idea be included in what you are presenting. Then we are looking for our next extract. No wonder the crime rate in the cities is forever rising, and there are daily reports of victims who lose their money, possessions, or even their lives to daredevil devil robbers. The idea simply here is that there is an increasing rate of crime in the cities as a result of unemployed migrants. Just put it, you know, in your own way. So, and then we are through with our answers to question A. We now go to question B, which is about the writer's suggestions. In 3 sentences, 1 for each, summarize the writer's suggestions for tackling the problem. Again, if you are using a preamble method, you after summarize here, you start your preamble from here. The writer's, all right, the writer's suggestions for tackling the problem are, you put a colon, and then in the next line you write I, all right, and then you come to this first one. Certain businesses such as banks and manufacturing industries could be encouraged to set up branches in rural areas. You change it to your own words, you know. You can say some businesses should be encouraged to set up branches in rural areas or to establish branches in rural areas. Simple. That is answer to I. Then you go to II. Now, let's look at this extract. Many rural dwellers are lured to the cities because of lack of amenities. So providing them in these rural communities will not only contribute to stemming the tide of migration, but also create favorable environment for investment. What are we looking for here? The second suggestion is simply provide amenities in the rural areas. You can change it to your own words, you know. Amenities should be provided in the rural areas. Simple. That's just the idea. Then that should be for II. Then III, we go to the next idea that we have extracted. If farming is made attractive, for example, through mechanization, it will become another source of employment for rural dwellers and thus reduce the necessity to migrate to the city. What's the main idea here? You know, make farming attractive through mechanization. Simple. So we can say farming should be made attractive through mechanization. Very simple. And that's exactly the way it is done. Then let's look at, you know, the answers, how they should be presented, because presentation of your answers is very important. You know, some candidates may have idea of what the answer could be, but then they fail in presenting it in the right manner. As I earlier pointed out, the examiner has given you question A, so your answer should be answer A. If you come to question A and you come with answer 1, of course, you'll be penalized because you are confusing things. All right, so the 3 negative consequences of rural-urban migration discussed in the passage are: I, rural-urban migration causes congestion in the cities. As I said, you can put it in your own words. If you ask 10 persons to present a single idea, chances are they may present it in 100 different ways and yet capture the main idea. One of the features of language is creativity. Language is creative. And so, like Noam Chomsky, a notable American grammatical theorist, stated, you know, users of a language have the innate ability to generate unlimited number of sentences. That's the creative aspect of language. So you have the creativity to form your own sentence and yet present the same idea, all right? Then the next one, facilities in the cities become inadequate for the population of people there, all right? You can present it in so many other ways, yet capture the same idea. So you don't worry, you know, just present it naturally in your own way, but let the main idea be captured. That's what is required in summary writing. Then the rate of crime increases because of increasing numbers of jobless youths. Very simple. Then question B, the writer's suggestions for tackling the problem are: note that this is an omission. Industries should be set up. Industries should set up branches in the rural areas in order to create jobs for rural dwellers. Okay. Basic amenities should be provided in the rural areas. Farming in rural areas should be made more attractive to the youths through mechanization. So, and that is exactly the way summary answers should be presented. I want to believe that you have been able to capture all that we discussed. We have been looking at summary writing in Neco, SSCE, and Wassce, and we took a past exam question for practical illustration. So, well, that's how it has been in today's lecture. This is where we draw the curtain. I want to thank you for being part of today's program. If you have benefited from today's video lecture and you want to give some comments of commendation, do not hesitate to leave your comments below. Such comments do encourage me to upload more videos for the benefit of my viewers. Now, if you have any comments as to how I can improve the quality of my lectures, I will also be very glad to welcome such criticisms, because when I started this video lesson production, my video lectures were of very poor quality, but I accepted the learning process, and today I think it's a little bit better, and I am still learning and I want to improve more. So if you have any questions as to how I can improve, then leave your comments below. If you have any suggestion as to the topic you want me to handle next, I will also be glad to do that. Today's video is really in response to a demand from one of our subscribers that actually requested that I should explain how a given exam question should be answered. And that's what I have done in this video. So your suggestions can bring a lot of improvement into the whole exercise. So once again, I want to thank you for watching. See you in the next video, and bye-bye for now.